It's not exactly breaking news that the Mario series loves its recurring level themes. Grasslands, deserts, snowscapes, forests all seem ever present. Sure, the presentation changes, ranging from levels that combine themes to twists on the familiar formula, but the vast majority of Mario levels fall into one of these familiar categories. And thinking about that raised a question for me. I mean, these themes feel ever present and fairly equally distributed, but are they really? If you were to play every single Super Mario game, starting in 1985 with Super Mario Bros. And ending in 2023 with Super Mario Bros. Wonder, which level theme would you venture through the most? That is the question I'm gonna answer here, and even though I'm sure we're all eager to start with the actual list, first I need to clarify the rules I use for these calculations. First of all, every Super Mario game counts, save for obvious spin-offs like Super Mario Strikers or Super Mario RPG. It does include both the 2D and 3D games though, as well as the Super Mario Land series up until Wario took over as protagonist. Super Mario Run also counts, as Nintendo surprisingly enough seems to consider it a mainline game, and it has clear separate levels with themes for all intents and purposes. The two Mario Maker games don't count however, since these work with limited themes and, well, this took long enough to calculate as is. I don't want to have to factor in all the billions of levels people have made themselves. However, my decision to include both 2D and 3D games does mean we need to think of a solution to accommodate for Super Mario 64, Sunshine and Odyssey, as those do not have traditional levels and instead have larger worlds. I figured the best solution for those first two was to hand out 1 point per star or shine sprite available in a themed level. I think that best represents how much time you would then have to spend playing in such a theme. For Mario Odyssey though, that isn't an option because of the monstrous amount of power moons, so instead I'm gonna hand out points equal to 10% of the total power moons in a kingdom, rounded for convenience. It isn't perfect, I admit, but these three are simply too important to be left out in my opinion. If you disagree with this reasoning though, fear not, as I will also make sure to specify the number of 2D levels only for each theme, which is a much more objective statistic. And finally, two more quick rules. If a level combines multiple themes together in a substantial way, it counts for both. I have also not counted the space or cosmic theme, as it appears in, for example, Super Mario Land 2 or later new Super Mario Bros. Titles, for the simple reason that it would make counting the two Super Mario Galaxy games an absolute mess, and the theme wasn't gonna end up all that high in the rankings anyway. Alright, with all that said, it's time to dive into the results, starting with the theme that appears the least, yet is still recurring enough to be noteworthy. And that would be the airship levels, Bowser's flying armadas that I guess you could technically not consider to be its own category and instead count for both castles and sky levels simultaneously, but I don't know, that didn't feel right to me. Airships debuted in Super Mario Bros. 3 and have since as a location amounted a total of 44 points. This makes it both the least recurring level theme in 2D and 3D games, which then obviously leads to the last place in the series in general. What is most interesting about the history of airships as a level theme is that they're wildly inconsistent. Most often they're completely absent from the games, but the few titles that do have them really push up their numbers. Super Mario Bros. 3 and Super Mario 3D Land, for example, contribute the vast majority of the total number of airship levels, and without those two games, airships wouldn't have hit the threshold required for me to single them out. While like 90% of the airship's points are contributed by a certain King Bowser Koopa, there are a few gained through other means. Examples include level World 5A from New Super Mario Bros. 2, which features a golden airship known as a Sky Move Lift, and 7 points were obtained thanks to the Rainbow Ride course from Super Mario 64, which prominently features the Rainbow Cruiser, another harmless airship. Well, especially in recent years, airships have been able to nab a few points here and there with occasional appearances. It simply hasn't been enough to keep up with the themes that get entire worlds to call their own. Speaking of which, out of the level themes that actually get entire worlds to call their own sometimes, the least recurring one is the mountain or rocky theme. A total of 54 points were gained across both 2D and 3D, with a distribution of 37 2D levels and another 17 points from 3D games. I would wager most people believe mountain-themed levels debuted in Super Mario World, with Choco Mountain near the end of the game, but the first points for this theme actually originate from Super Mario Land's World 4-2, set in the Chai Kingdom. Yeah, so Rosaland, the setting of Super Mario Land, is often portrayed as a desert kingdom, but it's actually only the first 3 levels that are set in a desert theme. The rest doesn't feature it at all. Not only does this allow for the debut of the mountain theme, it also gives us the Eastern Kingdom, a world based on Easter Island that I was simply unable to place anywhere based on the limited imagery I had to work with. Another fun fact about this game, Super Mario Land is the only Mario game that doesn't have any grassland or castle levels. Anyway, the mountain theme furthermore gained a decent amount of points for Super Mario 64's Tall Town Mountain. And no, not Cool Mountain, because despite being a mountain, it's actually not mountain themed, it's snow themed. Another surprisingly big supplier is Mario Bros. Wonder, which shuffles its themes to such a degree it isn't always entirely clear what themes we're even dealing with, allowing the rocky terrain aspect of mountains to score it some extra points. Not enough to stand up there with more common world themes, mind you, but I think it's a fair position. After all, mountain-themed worlds are hardly the first that come to mind when you think of Mario games, for me at least. And interestingly enough, that does not apply to our next candidate. Volcanoes or lava-themed levels feel extremely common in Mario games, but the thing is, they're actually not. Lava appearing in other themes is super common, don't get me wrong, but an entire level revolving around lava or volcanoes much less so. This hot environment scored only 2 points more than the mountain theme, ending on a total of 56. Only 36 of those come from 2D games, which is actually less than mountain, surprisingly enough. But thanks to 20 points from 3D games, lava-themed levels ended up one spot higher. Most of this is thanks to the Galaxy games, which have barely any mountain or rocky levels, but do feature several galaxies that are heavy on lava, magma and volcanic activity. While lava as a game mechanic and hazard appeared as early as Super Mario Bros., it wouldn't be until Super Mario World that we'd see an entire level revolving around a lava river in the Vanilla Dome. In fact, most of Volcano's points early on in the series come from the 3D games. Lethal Lava Land, Corona Mountain, the aforementioned Galaxy games. It's New Super Mario Bros. That brings dedicated volcano levels to the 2D titles in a proper manner, even making it a dedicated world theme, after which it rises to prominence and manages to race past Airship and Mountain, which up until this point in time had the lead. Still though, I'm sure I'm not alone when I said that I had expected to see this theme much higher on the list, but I guess that when you make the distinction between lava as a hazard versus as a level theme, the lower position makes sense. I think it's fair to say we move up an entire tier next, as we go out of the themes that score a point total in the 50s and move on to the 60s. The lowest ranking of those is the forest theme, considered to be the same thing as the jungle or swamp theme for the purpose of this video. It manages to rack up a total of 65 points, divided in 43 from 2D games and 22 from 3D games. As to when this theme makes its debut in the series is a bit contentious, but I personally counted it as early as Super Mario Bros, thanks to the several levels that are meant to be set in the treetops, which, you know, would require a forest of sorts. That said, it would be a couple of games before forest would become a true common world theme, only appearing sparingly here and there. For example, it's the only theme with its own entry in this video that doesn't appear in Super Mario 64. It does score a point in an interesting way from Super Mario Land, however, as World 4-1 is a bamboo forest, which has not appeared in the main game since. Similarly to mountains and volcanoes, this theme would see a huge uptick in number of appearances following the new Super Mario Bros. Rebranding, although interestingly enough, the vibe of the forest would switch from the more woodsy feel that is occasionally seen in earlier games to a more jungle and poisonous landscape. In this fashion, it would be present in all new Super Mario Bros. Games, as well as the 3D titles that followed, Super Mario 3D Land, 3D World and Odyssey. Speaking of Super Mario 3D Land, something I noticed during this research that may not be news per se, but I do think is good to reconfirm, for lack of a better word, is that the theming of levels in this game matches the 2D new Super Mario Bros. Games. It has to be intentional. Like, the distribution is almost identical, it's super noticeable. Anyway, another theme ending up in the 60s range, at 68 total points, is the Haunted House or Spooky theme. And this one is actually kinda interesting, especially in regards to it being higher than mountains, lava or forests. You see, there is only one 2D game which has a dedicated haunted world, being Super Mario Land 2. And yet, the Spooky theme did better in both 2D and 3D games than those themes, with 46 and 22 points respectively. It shows that consistent appearances throughout the games, like ghost houses have, are actually better for your total tally than having your own dedicated world. That said, what has caused the haunted theme to lag behind the true common ones is definitely its late introduction in Super Mario World, although it does actually score a couple points for Super Mario Bros. 3, since the theme appears in several E levels, which I counted if they didn't just remake levels. The same applied to the special worlds of Super Mario 3D Land and World, by the way. Only the original levels from the special worlds were counted, not the harder versions. Anyway, to go into a little more detail regarding the ghost theme, there were a couple of contentious levels that I did end up counting for this theme, like Matter Splatter and Flashback Galaxy, which may not be haunted or feature ghosts, but definitely strike me as creepy, as well as the Cap Kingdom, for which I can definitely see the argument it shouldn't count, but I don't know. I feel like it hits the creepy, eerie factor just enough to count. It does give the haunted theme the 3 points it needs to get above the forest theme though, so keep that in mind if you disagree with my reasoning. Next, we make a big jump of 10 points from 68 to 78, where we end up with the ice or snow levels. This is definitely one of the themes most often associated with Mario games, but it's still not enough to push it higher than 8th place, and that has a lot to do with the lack of appearances in 3D games. Only 26 points hail from that side of the franchise, which is only a few more than Haunted Houses for example, while a grand total of 52 come from 2D games. You don't know it yet, but that is the same amount of 2D points as some themes that are a lot higher on the list. Part of the reason why snow levels score so high in 2D games is because they've been around for quite a while. They first appeared in the Lost Levels, albeit only in the Super Mario All-Stars version, which I decided to use to make things easier on myself. The NES didn't exactly convey the sights very well. That said though, I almost counted Super Mario Bros. 6-3 as a snow level, which has a monochrome white level design, but it was Super Mario All-Stars that showed this is not meant to be considered as a snow level, and thus it didn't count. Another noteworthy snow level course hails from Super Mario World, which only has one ice level in the entire game, but at least it is awesome. And no, I don't mean that as a compliment necessarily, I mean the level is literally called awesome, with all special world levels being named after cool, hip words from the 90s like tubular and mondo. Man, imagine if Super Mario Bros. Wonder had a bonus stage called Skibbity. Fanbase wouldn't survive that. Anyway, moving on, we enter into the 80s, where we find another theme with remarkably similar problems as the snow world, just with a couple points more. The desert theme, with 82 points in total. 57 of those come from 2D games, while another 25 come from 3D games. And that immediately shows a familiar problem. They're relatively underrepresented in the 3D titles. It scored only 1 point more than the haunted theme in this side of the Super Mario series, despite having 13 more 2D levels. If it wasn't for the Sand Kingdom and its very useful 9 points, things would have looked even more ugly for this theme. That said, I think a huge part of why people associate desert levels with Mario so strongly is not necessarily the result of how often they appear, but when they appear. After all, they're quite commonly World 2, early on in the game, which masks that the theme really isn't that common for levels, relatively speaking. After all, there are 7 more themes to come, and we also have to consider that the desert theme gains the most points from Super Mario Land, as well as a decent chunk of its debut game Super Mario Bros. 2, which included the first desert world. Another possible reason for the lower position of the desert theme is the more recent rise of the ruin or temple theme, which is not prominent enough to feature in the video, but does thematically resemble deserts, and as such could have taken spots that would have otherwise been reserved for desert levels in say Super Mario 3D World or Mario Bros. Wonder. One step higher with 86 points, we find a theme that has never had its own world, but has been consistently present with levels here and there since Super Mario Bros. Underwater, out at sea, water-themed levels without significant land masses. Due to never having their own world, this theme only gets 52 points from 2D games, less than deserts and equal to snow worlds, but it makes up for this with 30 points from 3D games. Especially the Galaxy games and Super Mario 64 feature a significant amount of point-worthy locations that feature a ton of underwater action, and have helped this, let's admit it, often hated theme take up a respectable 6th position. The sides of these courses have essentially been the exact same throughout the entire series, just with the necessary graphical overhauls. I do want to highlight Super Mario Land 2's In the Syrup Sea, however, which is an underwater level that takes place in the plumbing of a house. By far the most unique use of this theme we've seen yet. But yeah, there is not a whole lot that can be said about this entry, it's pretty straightforward, so I suggest we just move on to the top 5. And there we start with another big gap to end up at underground or cave levels, which score a total of 94 points. As you would expect, this theme is significantly more common in 2D games, where it scores a whopping 77 points, almost as much as snow levels get in total. However, 3D games only net the underground theme a meager 17 points, which is the same number as the mountain theme from a good bunch of entries ago. Things actually started out decently in the 3D plane for this theme, with Hazy Maze Cave netting it nearly half its entire 3D point total in one swoop. But then things got dire for years. No points from Sunshine and barely any from the Galaxy games, before Super Mario 3D Land and World would cause a small uptick again thanks to their dedication to reusing themes from the 2D titles. By every metric, the underground theme is essentially just a more common underwater theme, but there is actually one interesting distinction. Underground has actually had its own world. The world map may not show it, but based on the most common level theme, Pipeland from Super Mario Bros. 3 is an underground world, although it's definitely a more diverse world than say your average snow or desert world. Another noteworthy cave level hails from Super Mario Land 2. Whale Course is a course set inside a whale. This makes it a cave from a visual perspective, but definitely one of the stranger ones we've seen in the series. We don't yet crash through that big 100 points as we look at the theme that finishes 4th. The beach or seaside theme. With a total of 98 points, this theme has done very well for itself, but this total is not without its noteworthy circumstances. You see, the beach theme only gets 40 points from 2D games, which is less than forests and haunted houses even, and is hard carried by its point total in 3D games, which is 58, the highest of all themes. And there is one big reason for this: Super Mario Sunshine. This entire game is basically set in a huge beach level. It shouldn't be a surprise that this theme scores a huge amount of points from here. Rico Harbor, Gelato Beach, Serena Beach, Noki Bay all can really be described as beach or seaside levels, netting the theme a total of 44 points right then and there, with 11 shine sprites available in each world. Now, while I certainly see the argument that this should disqualify either Mario Sunshine or the beach theme, I personally believe it is worth including for the simple reason that this is the only theme that has had an entire game devoted to it. Sweeping that under the rug is not right either. However, at the same time, I recognize the disbalance here, so I would definitely say the beach theme's 4th place is one with an asterisk next to it. To very briefly dive into its 2D outing, a big reason why this theme scores poorly in that regard is that although beach and water themed worlds are common in Mario games and have existed since the very first game, the beach and underwater themes have often been sharing these worlds, causing their point total to essentially be split between them. Onto the podium, starting of course with the bronze medalist. Finishing in 3rd place we have the Grasslands or Plain theme. It may easily be the most famous theme and kick off every single game, but when push comes to shove, the most basic theme doesn't get any further than 3rd place. It ends up scoring a fat total of 123 points, with 87 points coming from 2D games and 46 from 3D games, which puts it in 3rd place in every single category. The story of this theme is arguably the most interesting one of all of them, especially when starting at the beginning. At first, in the original Super Mario Bros. And Lost Levels, it wasn't even entirely clear this was meant to be a grassland, but that only really becoming clear thanks to Super Mario All-Stars. That said, I feel like Plains also covers that aspect to an extent, with this being a plain location. Anyway, up until Super Mario World, the grassland theme was actually the front runner and most common theme in the series, but over time its status decreased. More unique world themes took away from its appearances later on in games, and when the forest theme was promoted to a mainstay in New Super Mario Bros., that further spelled problems for Grassland. After all, both are lush, green and nature-based locations, and whereas older Mario titles often had grassland levels going as far as World 5 or 6, those spots were now being taken up by forest and jungle levels. Sure, the grassland remained the ever-present first world theme, from 2D to 3D, but whereas the top 2 themes kept showing up again and again throughout the games, that can no longer be said for Grassland. It has essentially become the tutorial theme, forced to be no more than the first world, and is really only this high thanks to the earlier games in the series. It will forever be iconic, but I doubt it will ever be the most common level theme again. We continue with the runner-up, the recipient of the silver medal, which is the Sky theme. With a total of 139 points, it's not even really close, as the Sky theme has truly made the most of the demise of the grasslands and sped right past it to the second spot. And unlike the grassland theme, which has a fairly balanced 2D-3D spread, the Sky theme leans heavily on 2D games. It scored 114 points from those games, with only 25 coming from 3D. Mind you, that is as much 3D points as deserts and haunted houses, it's nothing special. So, what is going on here? Well, there is a very clear explanation for all of this, or two explanations really. First, the disbalance between 2D and 3D. This is very clearly the result of level building versus world building. Most 2D games build levels with the core focus of players getting to have fun platforming through the stage. As such, it is not uncommon for entire courses to be built out of random platforms high up in the sky with bottomless pits underneath, which would then count for the Sky theme, obviously. These are generally the levels they used to call the athletic ones. This happens much less in 3D games, which focus on establishing actual believable worlds, and to put it harshly, don't go for the cheap route of random platforms scattered around the sky. The exception is Super Mario 3D Land and World to an extent, and lo and behold, those contribute a significant amount to the 3D points the Sky theme did end up getting. What didn't help either is the simple fact that the Sky theme basically doesn't exist in the Galaxy games, for the simple reason that most of these levels kinda step beyond the sky and go straight to space when flying around, if you get what I mean. So yeah, 2D is the Sky's bread and butter, and that is also why it was able to catch up to the grasslands. After all, Sky-themed levels appear almost everywhere. Every world can have a Sky level included here and there, up until this very day with Mario Wonder. And combine that with Sky being used as a theme for its own world as well on several occasions, and you might see how it scores such a massive amount of points in 2D games. Throughout the course of the series, the Sky theme has never been the #1 most common theme, but it has been consistently present in the top, and as long as Nintendo keeps making 2D platformers, I would expect it to remain near the top for a very long time. And then finally we have the grand winner. The most common level theme of the Super Mario games, with an absolutely insane number of 210 points, is the castle, fortress or tower theme. Might be easy to forget, but it can be a huge surprise when you really think about it. Almost every single Mario game features a castle at least, and starting with New Super Mario Bros, most worlds would have 2 castles, if not more, up until Mario Wonder, which dialed this back a tad again. And then I haven't even mentioned that plenty of games also have a castle theme for its final world. So yeah, an easy victory honestly. With a massive 161 points, this theme is the most common level theme for 2D games, while its still high 49 points from 3D games is not enough to beat the beach theme for aforementioned reasons, but is still very respectable. That said though, for the first few games, the castle theme was behind the grassland theme in second place, as its 1 castle per world wasn't enough to keep up with the many worlds that featured grassland levels. But after more and more world themes were introduced, the consistency of castles, towers and fortresses made the difference. Even in 3D, they have been almost ever present, with especially the Galaxy games having a ton of them, some not even Bowser themed. Up until Mario 3D World, almost all castle levels resemble medieval European style castles, but in recent years more oriental or even modern looks have also emerged, with Bowser Kingdom from Super Mario Odyssey as a prime example. With castle themes having become synonymous with the Mario series' greatest villain and a lead this massive to boot, I just simply cannot imagine this theme will lose its #1 spot anytime soon. So yeah, while this theme is probably the perfect one to end the video on, seeing as it's usually the last level in the game, I do want to quickly give those interested a little dessert, with a random grab bag of level themes that didn't fit any of these categories or were too small to end up on the list. For example, both Super Mario Land 2 and the Mario Galaxy games feature honeycomb themed levels, which amounted to a total points of around 10. Other best of the rest themes, so to speak, include food-based levels, which amounted for 14 points, factory or mechanical levels with 17 points, and mushroom-themed levels, which made their way up to 19 points, hard carried by the many mushroom platforms introduced in the new Super Mario Bros. Titles. An urban theme also got up to 10 points, entirely thanks to the Metro Kingdom and its 100+ power moons, which is similar to Pinna Park and its theme park theme, which got up to obligatory 11 Shine Sprite points. Both Super Mario Land 2 and 3D World feature levels with a circus theme, with the latter mostly using it for boss battles and the like. The oldest unique level theme hails from the Lost Levels, where Mario 8-2 has an autumn theme that wouldn't be seen again until Super Mario Galaxy. Anyway, that about wraps up the results. Which ranking surprised you the most? Share it in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like and subscribe to the channel to stay updated on all my future Mario content coming up. For now, thanks for watching and enjoy the rest of your day.